Yep.
All right, I would like to call tonight's Regional School Committee meeting to order. It's March 5th, 6:33. If it's okay, I'd like to go a little bit out of order so that we don't make Ronnie stay through the budget hearing.
Really? As much as I'd like to.
So just to quickly, we'll do community comments after the budget hearing so that people could ask if they have comments about that. They can do that. So we'll just start with the reports. And Mr. Smith was going to be here, but he's not because he's at the boys' basketball game. They made it to the second round, which is the farthest they've made it in
14 years.
14 years.
Ooh,
So
that's
Go
great.
team.
go team. So Ms. Ronnie Edney.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you again for having me here. So we finished up our work kind of as a council, or we're in the process of finishing up our work with the town meetings. We had meetings with cafeteria and IT departments. I wasn't able to go to the IT department meeting, but I was at the cafeteria meeting and we talked about a lot of good things. In particular, we talked with Nora Saul about different nutrition related topics that we could kind of implement at the high school. We talked about maybe having some kind of talks that she would give to the freshman health classes, because that's kind of the only health class that we're able to take. And we talked about maybe having some information for seniors that would be transitioning to college or living away from home about how to stay healthy when your meals aren't being all provided for you, and how to kind of keep control of that on your own. And I think the senior class would really benefit from that. I don't know if there's anything that we kind of know in that subject. I don't have any older siblings, so I'm really at a loss to kind of figure out what to do in terms of nutrition. I know that we had Spotify unblocked at the high school, which I know a lot of teachers and students really like and use frequently. We're going to see how that goes, kind of with the internet, and once it gets to MCAS testing in the middle school, we're going to see what we can work out. But as of right now, people are pretty positive with their responses. Other than that, last Thursday, which was the 28th, we had our blood drive, which was successful. We were able to gather donate over 40 pints of blood, which was really good. We had donations from lots of students, faculty, including Dr. Keogh was able to...
Double.
I know, double! And make a donation, and everything went pretty smoothly. We're hoping to have the Red Cross back next year for continuation of our tradition. We're also kind of gearing up for April Antics. I'll let you guys know once we get more information on that, but that's another one of the things that the council puts together. We've gotten a lot of feedback that students really want to see the basketball tournament that we try to do, sometimes including faculty if we can get them there. If they volunteer, the students really like to see that.
You still hit a 3-point shot?
Me, no. I can't hit any shots.
Layup.
On a personal note, I'm really excited next week on the close-up trip with a couple other U.S. government students. So we're going to D.C. To do a program there, and I'm super excited for that. Haven't been in a long time. I hope it's going to be...
Since 8th grade?
Yeah. Probably. That was the last time I was there. But we're going with a couple other students who take U.S. government classes, and I think it's going to be a really good time. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing there, but I know that I'm going to have a lot of fun. And that's kind of all I have to share. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'd love to hear some highlights from town meetings.
Yeah, so the seniors don't have town meetings because we're not going to be here next year, just to see the ideas that we put together. But we've had a lot of suggestions in different departments, and then we kind of bring the specific ones to cafeteria and IT, and the rest we talk to Mr. Smith about. So some of the ideas that we've pulled have been regarding having the hot water available so students can use it during break for tea and things like that. Not many students do, but those were some of the suggestions we've had. Spotify was one of the biggest things that students were kind of asking for, and we're trying that out, seeing how that goes. I know that Norrisol wanted to meet with us specifically to talk about like her work as a nutritionist and like let us know that she can do a lot. And if the students want to use her as a resource, we can. Students also expressed like positive remarks regarding the changes in the like cafeteria, I think atmosphere in general. We've been having a lot of new foods, and I think kids really like that, like positive response. I think that over the past few years, the quality of like variation in the food that we get and also like nutrition value has really gone up. I can try and pull together some highlights from the like kind of school atmosphere and bring them to the next meeting if you'd like. But
I was just curious if there were things that stuck out, like the really like the recurring themes amongst the grades. That's all I was curious about.
Yeah, I think sometimes the biggest thing, which is weird, is like air conditioning and heat being consistent throughout the school, because you'll go into one wing and it'll be freezing, and then you'll move 2 classes over and it'll be boiling hot. But sometimes that's just like dependent on the weather and how things go in the school. Also, there have been kind of suggestions for changes in the way the lunch line is navigated, because sometimes it takes a long time to move through, and students, get hungry when they're waiting a long time in the lunch line. Other than that, there have been kind of like mixed responses. Amongst the grades.
I think
That's
on the
great.
lunch line, I could just add that we just ordered a new cold tray setup that will be outside. So
I
things
did hear about that.
Right, so some of the lettuces and tomatoes and pickles and things that you would add to your sandwich or entree will just be self-served out of the main line. So that is on order and should be.
I think that
soon.
should be a big help, because I know a lot of the students, you still have to file through kind of one room to get everything you want, and it'll like really, I think, help.
Should make the line go faster.
Yeah.
If you don't have to stop. Yeah. So.
That's great.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks,
Thank
Ronnie.
you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thanks.
And you're welcome to stay if you want.
I've got things to do.
Homework.
Thanks. All right, Mr. Keller.
Thank you for the opportunity to come. I just wanted to point out a few of the things in the report, and then a couple of late additions that came to my attention today. First, Sandra Samarco, Steve Hart, and Teresa Bienemy have been invited to present at Medfield Digital Day on the augmented reality kit that they got through DSEF. So that's very exciting. Our 8th grade student Julie Sullivan, who is our school GOB champion, I found out this afternoon, took the state test and is qualified to move on to the state round
That's exciting.
later this spring in Chicopee. That will be, she'll learn about geography on the ride to Chicopee. It's out there.
Careful.
I'm not saying anything negative about it, it's just out there, you see a lot. Nothing negative about Chicopee. Sandra Samarco has also been very active with STEM initiatives. She has a group of girls that will be going to Wentworth for the Girls STEM Summit. She has another group of girls that will be going to Digi Girls Day at Microsoft. And she has worked with Olin College and will offer a workshop at the end of April here at the middle school for 5th grade, 5 through 8 students. So that's very exciting. And then finally, we have Caroline Gallagher, who's a junior at the high school, was also a Project 351 representative for the middle school, and she continues the tradition of our Project 351 students staying active. She is on the Alumni Council, and she will be hosting a group of 22 of our students, and conjunction with 22 students from Jamaica Plain Middle School. And it's through the Celtics. They have a program called the Playbook Initiative, which focuses on diversity, community, and inclusion. So that'll be, I believe it's going to be March 27th that they will come to us because we have the space. So it's very exciting. She's just a super young lady, and we're very grateful.
She's a junior.
She's a junior, so she hopefully will be able to continue it next year. But she had to apply. She had to write a letter outlining what she wanted to do and have recommendations. So it was a process that she went through, but she felt strongly about it.
That's a great organization. How long have we, has Dover-Sherborn been participating? Do you know?
Since the start.
Wow.
Since Governor Patrick initiated it. In matter of fact, one of our first representatives was Mark Seisler, who's now, he might be graduating from Harvard. He's a senior at Harvard. And he ended up being the on that first alumni council, and I forget the term, he was like president or chairman of that group. So she continues that tradition.
They do good work. Nice kids. They come to the
Fantastic.
superintendent's conference in the summer. A chance to talk to them and find out what they're up to. It's a really good organization.
I went with Caroline to a workshop at the Celtics training facility with, I believe there were 18 other schools. And they did a fantastic job. Gentleman Dave Hoffman from the Celtics and Caroline Casey from Project 351.
Right.
Just in tune to everything.
Yep.
So we're very excited for that.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if it's a Scott question or a Beth question. I'm curious about the FLES program, because isn't next year is the first students will be coming up. So I don't know, at some point can we hear how that impacts curriculum, what's going on there, and just what the game plan is, since it's finally here? I feel like I've been on the school committee since it started, so.
I'm happy to cover that in my report when we get there.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
All right, thank you. That's a good point. And I neglected to say that although John's not here, his report is in the packet. If you can look at that. Yes, Ms. McCoy.
Okay, great. So my formal report is pretty straightforward, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I invite both Anne and Maggie if they'd like to share anything about the Academic Innovation Committee, seeing that they're both members. But that has launched, and it's very exciting. We have another event coming up March 21st, which will be an opportunity for community members and parents who work in various industries to come forth and talk about the skills that they'd be looking for in future employees and colleagues. As we start to define what the skills that our students need for success in college, career, and life. The DSEF grants, I'd like to expand and say that the K-12 projects that have been put forward are very exciting, especially the Innovative Spaces grant. That was a collaboration between all 4 schools, and there is a book that Allison Gullingsrud from Pine Hill, the new assistant principal there, is proposing as part of the grant that teachers would read, and it's really about taking everything out of your classroom and starting from scratch from the student's perspective and really making it student-centered, and getting rid of the desks and the rows and having flexible seating and really just making sure that it's about the kids and empowering the kids to take ownership of their learning. So there were a number of teachers who applied to be part of the initiative should it be granted by DSDF. Unfortunately, we don't have enough money to give everybody that go, but we're definitely going to provide 4 or 5 teachers at each school an opportunity to innovate their classrooms, and hopefully the excitement and wins will catch fire throughout the schools, and we can continue to do that moving forward. The Wellness Committee we had our first meeting, be it late in the year, and thank you for Judy for joining us. I think the exciting thing is that we left this spring with 5 goals, which I had kind of given you the topic sentences for in the report. And when we came back together, be it halfway through the year, there was so much to report. As I said to the committee, they've kind of had an identity crisis, the Wellness Committee, being that Challenge Success has taken on so much of the social emotional learning and all that it entails. And so where does the Wellness Committee fit? And so we've kind of thought of it as the leadership of all these subgroups, whether it's the PE and Health Department, whether it's SPAN DS, which we no longer exists, Challenge Success, the school leadership, reporting out and saying, here's our bigger goals, now let's take them back to our constituencies, get them done, and then report back. So last week we had a reporting back session, and there was just so many things going on, and I wish there was an opportunity for us to capture that all in a way that people would actually digest it and read it and understand it, because there's just so many positive things. So I think, as a communication committee moves forward, we just have to think about how do we get this information out there in pieces that people are really going to take time to see all of the good things happening. Health curriculum, the K-5 team for both schools has been meeting and doing amazing things with martial arts. 6 through 12, they've been, sharing and innovating their practices. Movement and mindfulness, we have the recess at the middle school, we have pre-recess at Pine Hill. Nutrition, as Ronnie said, the nutritionist, Nora, has come in and taken the advocate report and just brought it to life and done so many things already moving forward, which is great. Technology and safety, we've hardwired our labs and started to look at best practices in terms of using technology, when to use it, when not to use it, to make sure that it's active and productive use. And related to that, the wellness, the challenge success speaker last week, Dr. Steiner Adair, she just captivated the audience with her presentation on how technology, as Andrew said, is disrupting relationships and disrupting family life. And there is now a plea from the faculty and even some students who'd like to have her come back and talk to them about how to prioritize things in life and set the record straight in terms of what we should value. And then wellness and DS, again, so many groups doing so many different things, so many ideas. How do we come together perhaps and celebrate it all together?
What I was going to say is the thing that amazed me the most actually was the food and nutrition piece and how much they're doing. And I was really heartened to hear Ronnie, of her own volition, echo that, because it's something that gets a little bit of short shrift when it comes to wellness. But as a parent who now has kids who are eating on their own, you realize how important that foundation is, and the things that Ronnie was saying about, yes, these are positive changes from our perspective, really mirrored what I heard Janelle and the woman who's the nutritionist whose name escapes me.
Nora.
Yeah, I thought that was fabulous. I thought it was really, really good progress.
Thank you. So all exciting things on the wellness front. Speaking to the question about FLES, so it's actually interesting because tomorrow is early release day in the elementaries, as well as next Wednesday, because they have teacher conferences, which relates to classroom teachers and not necessarily specials. And so we had that opportunity in the fall during parent conferences, and then this time with parent conferences. And I was saying to myself this morning as I was planning the agenda, I'm like, I feel like I've been living with the FLES teachers all year in preparation, which is good. So what has happened? A lot. So the fifth graders actually at both schools, we took a random sampling of them, and they took the Apple test, which is a standardized measure of their proficiency to see if among many of the goals of FLES, which is really about culture and understanding differences and exposure to new sounds and new language, we were hoping that they would be at the novice, high, intermediate, low level in terms of speaking and listening. Reading and writing we knew would kind of come later in time, probably more middle school, since they're still learning to read and write in English in elementary level. But they took the test, and the average student scored novice, high, or intermediate, low in all 4 domains. So it was really fabulous to see. So that's been happening. We also had a share out a couple weeks ago. K through 12, all of the world language teachers came together, and it was an opportunity for K through 5 to kind of highlight the student work samples that they have and the activities that they're doing in class. They actually brought student work samples and videos of kids speaking and acting and doing things in class. And we'd broken up into groups for various activities, and we're passing student work around, and without prompting, 2 different groups, a high school teacher in both, at similar times, because I was walking around, said, oh my goodness, a 5th grader wrote this? Mm-hmm. So I think they're pleasantly surprised at the progress that the FLES program has made. The middle school shared out as well in terms of the activities, the more progressive activities they're doing about really, as they were saying, it's like Nike, you just do it. You just got to get them speaking. Forget about the grammar, forget about, the punctuation, like get them used to speaking the language so that they can, survive in another country. And so I think the high school, has seen what the elementary schools have done, which is amazing. The middle schools are progressing too, and have identified some needs in terms of the professional development moving forward to prepare for these kiddos moving up. So I feel like a lot has been done. They continue to share work electronically, and the 6th grade teachers are going to have some time both this spring and the summer to update the curriculum and write the curriculum as necessary.
Terrific. So when you think about options for next year, so your incoming 6th graders have the opportunity to choose still between the 3 language options. How will you handle students who are new to the district or came from a program? Will they have to choose French or Latin,
it's going to depend on kind of the numbers of current fifth graders who choose Spanish and how many sections we can create. So as always, the middle school teachers will go down and speak to the fifth grade students and parents about the options, and we'll kind of see how it rolls out. I spoke with the current director in Brookline, who oversees the K-12 program, including the FLEX program, and I said, kind of what patterns have you seen? And she said that they have both the Spanish program at the elementary level and the Chinese program, the Mandarin, and she said in their system, children tend to stick with the language that they started with in elementary school, and I'm thinking, oh no, what does that mean for French and Latin here? But doing an informal dipstick, both as a parent of a fifth grader, as well as the fifth grade FLEX teachers, there's really a mix of kids who want to stick with it because they love it, and kids who are like, oh, middle school, I finally have a choice in something, goodbye Spanish, hello French, or hello Latin. So I think it's really going to be a mix. And we've looked at the schedule and the teachers and the availability, and oftentimes French teachers can teach Spanish and vice versa. So hopefully it's going to play out in a way that we can, and for kiddos making it hopefully their first choice.
And what's the time on that, Scott? That the kids will pick their courses?
We'll get the selections by April vacation from the elementary schools.
Yeah. So that is a big question mark. What are the kids going to sign up for? And also, things like you just mentioned. If a student comes in from somewhere else, what does that mean for them?
Right. Right, because at this point there's the deepening of the curriculum, and then there's actually changing it. So if you have kids that have a basic proficiency, you could actually move faster, or you just go deeper.
Correct.
So it doesn't necessarily change your curriculum, which would allow.
Well, I think you would have to change the curriculum for sixth grade in the sense that sixth grade curriculum now is very basic Spanish,
true.
and you've got kids who have been taking
it for 5 years.
it would be ludicrous, but going forward, yes, there's the deeper thing. So I'm assuming the teachers are not expecting to teach basic Spanish.
Right, and it's also the idea of both innovative teaching and learning as well as a proficiency model are saying get rid of the textbook, stop going chapter by chapter, page by page, and just get them invested in primary resources, whether it's videos or phone interviews or articles from the newspaper in whatever country. So they're getting rid of the textbooks, and they're saying, okay, how do we start from scratch with getting the kids involved in the real, actual culture? But it's still going to be spiraled. So, the elementary kids have learned about the parts of a classroom and the parts of a home and the parts of a restaurant, but now they're going to be able to go deeper. And the goal of the middle school program, as they've defined it, is to more dig into the social justice part of it and the culture part of it. So they're still going to talk about school, and they're still going to talk about the restaurants, and they're still going to talk about the marketplace, but they're going to start to talk about how culture influences people, and what is need versus what is want, and how is food impacted, and accessibility of different things in different countries.
They'll be using those things to take a deeper dive.
Right.
I think it's great. I mean, what I witnessed in private school was full immersion. Was starting in 8th grade, there was no English spoken in the classroom, and it was great. So I'm sure that you're going to have an opportunity to move more towards that model, especially with kids who've been listening to it for 5 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, in fact, the high school teachers were kind of, again, shocked because they have, I don't know if you've ever met Laura Romer from Chickering, but she is so animated and so full of energy. I wish I had a portion of her energy. But she was saying how she speaks 100% in the target language, but through her emotions and through her activities, the kids can pick up on it. And the high school teacher's like, you want me to do what? I'm like, we can do an improv over the summer. We'll get you ready.
Okay. Awesome. Yes, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this again later in the spring. Dr. Keogh, please.
Yes. So, well, first, I think it's important for us to acknowledge the loss of our high school senior, Julian Latterman. And it was a terrible loss for our school system, and our thoughts go out to his family at this very difficult time. I want to also there aren't words to say how well John and his staff responded to that terrible accident, and they just were incredibly thoughtful and really wanted to make sure that the family felt supported, and that the teachers who worked closely with this young man daily felt supported, and his siblings. So they had a very trying week, and I just was so impressed by the way they handled that. So obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to Julian's family. I also, everything else I have to say seems to pale in comparison. But I should mention to you a couple of things, and one is that the Director of Student Services search has actually progressed further than when I wrote this report, and so we do have two candidates coming forward. And one is a woman named Catherine McCarthy, who goes by Kate, and the other is Elisa Waldman-Sisson, and they both have agreed to come and visit the district on the 14th. So that's a Thursday.
14th of March.
14th of March. We are working on the schedule, and Cheryl will get that out to all the school committee members soon, but we just wanted you to try and save that afternoon if possible. And that's right now what we're looking at. So I also want to thank the search committee. Maggie is on that search committee. It's been a really challenging in terms of time and energy process, because we really tried to do a good job of making sure that we checked into each candidate very closely, asked thoughtful questions, thought really about where we are as a system in terms of our special education service delivery and our guidance and nursing service delivery. So it was, we had a lot of really good, healthy conversations, and we feel good about the candidates coming forward. So I did want to tell you that. I also wanted to mention that the Start Times task force is still working, still working, spending lots of time on the work that I've talked to you about before. Unfortunately, the community event with Dr. Chuck Seisler, scheduled for last night, was canceled because of the weather. So we actually have a date. We're just working on some details, but I think the date is going to hold, and that is March 26th. So once that is fully established, we'll get another announcement out, and people will ask people to RSVP again, because we want to make sure we have the accurate count. We have been out and about the community. You may have heard or even seen or heard from some of us. We're really trying to get the word out why we're looking at this, and we're getting closer to building some scenarios that we could present to the joint school committees in April. So at that time, we would expect feedback on these. So we'll try and get those to the school committee members as early as possible, so that they can really think things through. It's not easy. This topic is not even easy to talk about, and the closer we get to it, the more anxious people will get. But we're keeping our eyes on the prize, and the prize is doing what's in the best interest of the kids ultimately. It really has to be. And the medical research is just too powerful to dismiss. So I feel good about it. I want to thank the people who participated in that. If you are really just looking for something to do, you can always watch the Kiosk Corner that I mentioned in my report. But I had a nice conversation actually with Joe Murray, who's a junior, and Evan Strauss, also a junior. And they interviewed myself and Michael Jaffe from the Dover School Committee, who's also on the Start Times Task Force. And we had a really good conversation. They hit us with some good student questions. We will be meeting with students in the next 2 weeks, or actually next week. So, and at the high school, we're looking at having a conversation with 9th and 10th graders, because they'd be the only ones impacted, because we're not going to try and put something forward for next year, so it would be the year after, so that takes the seniors and juniors out of it. And we're also meeting with the student council of the middle school next week, so there may be a follow-up to that, but we're really trying to make sure that people hear what's happening and understand why we're looking at this. That's really it. I did want to point out two other things. One, I want to thank Beth McCoy and the high school, middle school faculty. We had a great presentation this afternoon to them, which was really about the future of DS and where are we going. And this is something we wanted to do at the beginning of the year, but we got pinched on time on our kind of reentry from the summer. And we've done it with the community, with families. And so we really felt like it was sort of overdue for the faculty. So we did that this afternoon, and hopefully it was helpful to the teachers and that they will feel more grounded in terms of understanding why we're doing the things that we're doing when we talk about this innovation committee or start times or whatever the cultural proficiency, whatever it is, the topic. This all connects to the strategic plan, and we wanted to make sure that people understood that. So that was good, and I want to thank the high school, middle school staff, and John and Scott for letting us have a little bit of their time. And then finally, I did want to point out some really commendable news that I know John had in his report. But it's always nice to have some kudos for some of our students. So I just want to go quickly. It'll only take me a second, I promise. But I want to give credit to the finalists in the National Merit Scholarship, which was Alex Baruti, Elizabeth Hovey, Johanna Schultz, Scott Siri, and Hannah Zato. So congratulations to them. That is not any small feat. That's a big deal. Also, we had some wonderful art awards that I wanted to point out. Art and Writing, the Mass Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. There was a gold key for Lila Hovey. For printmaking, Dan Pomhock. For photography. Silver key, 2 silver keys for Lila, so congratulations to her. Honorable mention, Margaret Bragdon for photography, Bridget Hughes for painting, Anna Pomhock, drawing and illustration, Grace Chen, for painting. She actually, I think, had 2 awards and honorable mentions. In writing, Lila also very nice. Short story and poetry, gold key, which is impressive. Silver key to Margaret Bragdon, and honorable mention, 2 honorable mentions to Margaret Bragdon. So congratulations to them. And finally, this is the second year in a row that our students participated in the one-act plays. The Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild play competition. Their second year that they have made it to the semifinals. So kudos to all of them for their entry of Widows and Vegetables. And don't miss the musical Chicago coming up next week as well. So there you go.
May I just ask a quick question on the start time when you guys do come back? So when you say scenarios, that would be if we start at this time, extra help will be at this point, and athletics will be is that the level of detail that you would imagine sharing in a scenario?
I think the level of detail that we are imagining sharing is what times would we start with, say, a flip scenario, or would we start with, say, a push scenario where we push everything out, or would we start with a one-run scenario, which is probably the least likely, but we should still make you guys aware that these things are out there. But we want to be able to kind of apply those theories to our actual schedule. So what would it look like? And then a lot of those questions, quite honestly, are going to have to be, some of those will have to be hammered out over the course of next year. For example, when would the extra help periods be?
Right.
I mean, obviously people are still going to need their extra help. How would we work that? Would there be any changes to, say, for example, faculty meeting times? Some of those things we just can't answer yet, but we'll do our best that night.
Good, because it seems like to get traction on any one scenario, you need to drill down enough into the details to know how it would flesh out and what impact it would have.
Right.
Whether it's financial impact of buses or busing to extra help or not. I mean, all of those details seem pretty as important as the underlying science, but how you do it, not just why you do it.
Agreed. And I guess what I'm saying is that some of those things, for example, we don't know if we had later start times for the middle school. Would people be looking to drop their kids off earlier and have some kind of before school? I know it seems unusual, but perhaps people might have an interest in that. We may not know the answers to that. Same thing for the elementary schools, which I know is not entirely your domain, but it's just the same. It's all connected, and so we'll need to know from people whether or not they would take advantage of something like that. What we can do is share what we know has been done in places that have done it. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, and we wouldn't want to. So things like athletics, what kinds of alternatives have places come up with who don't have lights? Mm-hmm. So what have they done for practices or golf matches that go late? And so we can share that stuff, and that is probably what we would do. But some of those things will definitely just have to be hammered out the following year. But we would give as much as we can.
Can I add one thing on that? Because I've been on this committee, and I at first thought, geez, how are we going to hammer all that out, before the end of the year? But I think we'll get a better result by saying there's a whole lot of ways and things that we can do depending on which scenario, is decided on. And it's better, I think, to have buy-in on a lot of those things and some extended discussion. That seems to have worked well in other places.
That makes sense to me. I guess I imagine it being an iterative. I mean,
yes, exactly.
We can sit down and come up with the 5 obvious questions right now.
Yeah.
So I would expect that there's the 5 obvious questions, which is, there's some things that we are responsible for, which is extra help and athletics and whatever, and faculty meetings. So those are the first 5. Yeah. And then there's the next 5, which is, do we have a before school program? How's the app? So and I'm not saying any of those, it's not that it's in importance, the first 5 versus the next, but we already know what some of the key questions are. Definitely. So it seems like we need to get to some level of understanding of the details to even know, because otherwise we'll have so many permutations and scenarios. At some point you have to start directing down a path to flesh it out. So, but until, it seems like we need a certain amount of information to even know which path is the most logical to really hammer out what that next level of detail is.
So that's kind of what we've talked about. That's what we've talked about with the task force, and that's kind of what I've floated with the chairs as we talked about kind of scheduling this out. Mm-hmm. But in April, what we've talked about is with the joint committees, sharing with them what we've come up with and some scenarios that we've come up with and the pros and cons of each. Right. And that would be their opportunity to say to us, this would need more fleshing out, or I wouldn't be comfortable with this if I knew that this was the issue. But then we would then take that information and attempt to come back again in April, because we have another meeting later that month with responses to any of the questions that came up. Yeah. And then we'd have to, make a decision whether or not we, sign on to something. I make a recommendation to you and you get on board with it this year, or I make a recommendation to you and you say, we're on board with that recommendation, but we want to come back in November for more information as to, such and such. Because it has to be a process, but I do think at some point you have to kind of make that decision. This is the one we're leaning towards. Right. So, and that allows you to begin stop wasting time on the other ones and start, putting your energy into the ramifications of the one that seems to be.
When we talked about it 5 years ago, it was easy. You'd bring up 3 things why that can't work, and we moved on. And so clearly you guys have done a lot of homework. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm expecting on the 9th you're going to come with, we've already asked ourselves those first 5 questions, and here's how we got to.
That's right. That's how we're viewing it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
And Dawn's on that committee as well. But that is
Yeah, that's sort of, we had a discussion today on scenarios, and that's sort of the direction we're taking.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that we're seeing that first meeting as much more of a presentation. We throw questions back, and then the discussions really happen more at the next meeting.
That's how I was envisioning it.
Yeah. Okay.
That puts us to the end of April. We're not at the end of the school year yet, and but we will be moving forward with this process. It has to kind of keep on rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would say that the longer runway we can give it between decision has been made that a change will happen and time to implement that change, that space needs to be long, because I know it just, any change causes anxiety, and I would love to see us have made a decision to make a change before the next school year starts. Do we think that's reasonable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
My hope, quite honestly, was that we will have made a decision on which way we're going, and with a scenario by the end of this year, so that next year we would be able to do all of that work and budget, if there are financial implications, for it to take place in the following year.
Got it.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Thank you. We're going to continue with reports and just do Dawn's monthly financial.
Which is, there's actually no new information here. The numbers have been updated, but the variances have remained fairly stable. I will just point out that the plants and facilities, the maintenance of buildings, is in the red right now, but I didn't include it in our report because what we do at the beginning of the year is we put reserves in for a lot of our vendors who are contractors who do repairs for us throughout the year. So it's time we go and look at those encumbrances that we're holding and see if there's money we'll let go to cover the overages and other ones. So I didn't want to make a call on that projection until we had an opportunity to sit down and do that. Other than that, though, everything else is operating the way that I think we've been discussing for the past several months. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Yep. Okay, so now we need to actually adjourn this meeting.
Oh wait, no, we're gonna do OPEB.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yep, thank you.
Consent
Dawn.
agenda as well? Or no?
We'll come back to that because we have to do the school choice.
Great. Okay.
Sorry, so we can do OPEB. So Dawn.
Hop into the regional budget hearing, I just wanted to just sort of summarize for the committee. Last week at both our meetings, we discussed in detail the funding of the initial funding of OPEB, and just to confirm that what we've worked into the numbers that you'll see in the presentation is a $500,000 initial contribution investment into the fund, with that coming from the community ed funds, which I reported to the committee, and Dana, just so you know, has a fund balance right now of just a little over $800,000. The $500,000 has really been surpluses from the afternoon programs over the last 10 years, where it has averaged about $60,000. I don't see necessarily that continuing. We're starting a new protocol where we're actually going to be assessing rent to both those programs that are run at the region but are housed at the elementaries. So a little bit of that surplus that we've been seeing is actually going to be funneled back to the 2 building committee funds in both the elementary schools. And we're finding too that healthcare plays a little bit of a role in this. What our surplus is in those programs is heavily dependent on the employees that we have who qualify for benefits, obviously because it's a part-time program, and whether or not they take benefits. I have looked over the last couple of years, and when you see swings, it can go back and see it's because people have taken health care. So it's not something we can bank on continuing to be there, but it makes sense to use that funding right now for purposes of kicking off your OPEB. So just so if there were any further questions before we rolled into the presentation, that is all incorporated into your numbers. And there is actually a slide in the presentation with a little more information.
And maybe I just missed this. How does that actually show up when in the blue book at town meeting, or how does it?
It really won't, because the assessment is what shows up, and it's because you're funding it. There's no impact on the assessments, so it's in your overall gross operating budget. But you're funding it, and you'll see there's a slide about revenues. So the 500,000 is funding source, and then the 500,000 is a expenditure.
So it's always
So
going
going forward, though, yeah, just see how we did them.
But when on our blue book line,
On your blue book line,
is the percent increase the 2.75%, or is it the plus 500,000 in there, which would make it more than 2.75?
we're sort of looking at it as a separate line item.
Okay.
You're approving the gross budget with 500,000, but in all the reports, and we've tried to, in all the presentations we've done, we are excluding that so that there is a true budget to budget comparison.
Great.
And it's not throwing that off.
Great, because as we all know, that's what people look at in town meeting.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So this particular year, even though your budget includes that, most of our presentations are going to be on the true operating budget.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, everyone's good with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now we have to adjourn this meeting. So do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And so now I'm going to call the FY20 Dover-Sherborn Regional School budget hearing in session. And what we're going to do is Dr. Keo's just going to talk a little bit about the mission and the strategic plan overview, and then we'll jump into the numbers.
The slides. And we're going to go with slides at the same time, yes?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, one thing that I always want to remind people of, and especially the public, is that the budgets for the schools, all of our schools in the system, and especially this one this evening, they're goal and mission driven. So the reason I emphasize that is I don't think it's healthy for us to have the community think that, no, we ask for stuff because it seems like a nice thing to ask for, and we got this much last year, so why not ask for the same thing? We're actually, when we ask for things, we ask for the things that we think support our mission, which is up here once again, so you can see that for yourself. And also, what's important about this: inspire, challenge, and support all students. That's key language. This is the mission statement that we've had for some time, but it's really important that it links to our strategic plan, which on the next page you see it's actually built into it. I know you can't read that from where you are, but all of this kind of the vision, the mission, the theory of action, the core values, all lead into our strategic objectives of innovative teaching and learning, health and well-being of staff and students, partnerships with families and communities, safe and innovative facilities, and resource efficiency. So when people at home, especially, I know you know this, but when people at home listen or hear about our budget, I hope they realize that it's built to support all of this work that we've done. So it all connects. And that's really what I wanted to kind of preface our presentation with.
Okay, great, thank you. And also to note that the strategic plan is, there's a link to it from the school website. It's an interesting document, goes into much more depth than just that one slide. It's worth a perusal. And also that this PowerPoint will be posted tomorrow, if you want to be able to see it in closer detail. Let's talk a little bit about the budgetary focus. So our focus is to, as it says, to review and revise the educational services to meet student needs, which is clearly a clear goal. And there are certain things that we're obligated. We have to fund contractual salary obligations. We have grounds and facilities to maintain. We continue to try to remain fiscally responsible. We have to comply with federal and state mandates. And as we just talked about, we're beginning to fund OPEB liability, which I think is a really important step. It's something new for us, but it's really important. Town guidance is pretty straightforward. Dover says level service, and Sherborn is level funded with 2% increase for salaries. That's actually a change for us that just came down from Sherborn, and I want to thank Dawn for the changes that she made to the slide for that, acknowledging that. Talk a little bit about what the budget drivers are. Enrollment clearly is one projected to remain constant. The numbers can change, but at least for the numbers for the region for FY19 were 1,203, and the projection for FY20 is between 1,207 and 1,215. So fairly level. We're in the third year of our collective bargaining agreement, so we know what those obligations are this year. Next year, we will start the process for the following bargaining for the contract negotiations. SEL, which stands for Social Emotional Learning Programming and Supports, is as we go back. If you look back at the mission, that is definitely one of our strategic goals. And healthcare, changes to plan design and offerings have continued. And thank you to the subcommittee, the healthcare subcommittee that has done some amazing work over the past 2 years working with that. So thank you. All right, so we've got revenue projections. And what this does is to help you better understand the budget, it's helpful to break it down. The largest source of funding obviously is from the two towns. The town assessments are just a little bit above 22 million, and we'll go into greater detail about that later. We do get state funding, it's primarily Chapter 1771, of just under 3 million. Student fees and E&D, which stands for excess and deficiency funding. So the total projected revenue is 25,292,254, with, as an asterisk, as Dawn just noted, the 500,000 for regional funding for OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, for those who don't know the acronyms. And we'll go into some more details in a moment about that. All right, so the operating budget is about 2.75% more than last year, and you can see up here the numbers. And it's helpful to understand what goes into the number, the 677,000 plus, that's in the top right corner. What goes into that increase? First of all, there's an increase in salaries of 560,000 salaries across the district. That's every salary across the district, as if everyone from FY19 just moved to FY20. It does not include staff changes, retirements, any of that, which is why in the next line it talks about the retirements confirmed as of February 1st will give us 90,000 reduction from that 560,000. Does that make sense? People are following? Okay. We do have, if we look at the SEL program, that's $120,000 in salary increase. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And once again, all of this is going into 675. Thank you. The increase over last year's budget. There's the phase-in of the bridge program. It's a $30,000 increase, and additional EAs based on student need, which is $75,000. And something to note is that the educational assistances are based on student need. It's not something that we, as a district, have choice about. It's mandated, and I just think that's important for people to know. It's not that we're saying, oh, let's just have some more people in the classroom. Talk a little bit more about the social emotional learning services. We're going to establish a therapeutic learning center in the middle school. To do that, as it says here, we're reallocating a 1.0 educator, so that's not a new hire. We are adding an adjustment counselor. And the additional SEL support for students means we'll go from 1 psychologist to 2 at the region, means we'll go from a 0.1 BCBA to a 0.5, and that will go from a 1.5 adjustment counselor to 2 full-time adjustment counselors. And those are the additions, and I think it's really important. We are not the only district that's adding social emotional learning services for the students. It's perhaps unfortunate, but there is really an increased need. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You did a good job.
Yes. So we know that for our a new program, which we would situate in the middle school, that this actually is a segment of the population where we, for a number of years now, have been unable to kind of meet their needs. And when we looked at the data, it showed that the places that we typically lose students is 7th and 8th and 11th and 12th. Those are the places where kids tend to leave for the social emotional learning. The Bridge program has shored up some of that concern at the high school level, but at the middle school level, I don't believe, and we've concluded, we do not have adequate supports for the kids who have social emotional struggles. So we do think we need the program. We do think we need the adjustment counseling. We also want to acknowledge that our psychologists are, as is typical in school systems, our psychologists handle most of our evaluations, pretty much all of our evaluations of our students who are being referred for special education. But they're psychologists. They can provide counseling. They're skilled at counseling. But if all that they can do is evaluate students, then we're not getting that other benefit. And our students, we know, special ed and gen ed, need support. They need places to turn besides just a guidance counselor. Not that a guidance counselor is the only is not a good approach, but sometimes the situations call for even more advanced experience, and that's where the adjustment counselors come in. So we have felt that, and this is based on what staff have told us, is that they're stretched too thin, and that we really need the adjustment counselor at the middle school and the adjustment counselor at the high school, and the adjustment counselor at the middle school connects well with the program, and then at the high school they would have their own separate adjustment counselor, correct? Did I get that right?
We haven't determined whether we'd have, right now we have 1.5 adjustment counselors who are shared between, they follow students from 6th through 12th.
Right.
So the thinking is we might continue to do that, but 0.5, the adjustment counselor would be
associated with
our therapeutic learning center.
So one thing that people don't necessarily think about is that if you have this therapeutic learning center, that takes a lot of pressure and time off of our existing support staff, because they would have dedicated support staff.
Dr. Keogh, is it your expectation that by making this investment in the SEL programming at the middle school that we would be able to keep more students in district who we've historically placed in expensive out-of-district placements, and also be able to maintain them in their community school?
Yes. So obviously both are important. I would say the most important thing, based on my experience and based on what I've heard from people, is they would like their kids to stay in school with their peers. They'd like to stay at Dover-Sherborn. But if Dover-Sherborn can't provide the services, then yes, they will have to go somewhere else at cost to us. So our priority is obviously to do what's in the best interest of all kids, including these kids who have these challenges, but also the gen ed kids who benefit from the friendships that they have established with these kids. And then secondly, we also want to be efficient with our resources, and we do believe that this is a place, based on what the feedback from the consultants, this is a place that we should be focusing our interest and attention.
Thank you.
Yep.
And also to note that we did have experts come in and look at our special education program, and that this also came out of some of their recommendations for it, for us. All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
And also just run back. So all of that is an additional $120,000 in salaries. Since we're talking budget.
Yep.
All right, so the operating budget expenditures. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. It's just important to note that there have been significant healthcare savings based on the new plans and designs. And you can look at the numbers pretty clearly where it says reduction. Where it's in red, it's a reduction. Where it says plus, that is an addition, an increase to the salary, to the budget rather. And if you add and subtract all of these numbers plus the ones with the SEL program, you come to approximately $677,000. Not quite, because some of the numbers were rounded a little bit, and that will give you the additional money over last year's budget. So you can see where that all came from. If we look at, this is merely the assessment, and if people don't quite understand, the state gives us, first the state gives a minimum contribution, local contribution, and so that's
for the towns.
For the towns,
Yep.
Thank you. And then we also have then percentages based on our town agreements, which is why it's a different amount for each, for Dover and Sherborn. So that you can see that in Dover, the operating budget increased by almost 4.2%, and Sherborn only increased by just under 1%. And if you take the operating plus the debt equals the budget, so the number at the bottom center column for FY20 is the same as the number from 7th slide that talked about the FY20 revenue projections. So it all ties together. People following that. We can quickly just, this is just an FYI. These are the capital items. We are funding those through E&D, so that's not part of our town ask this year. And so we will be voting on that in a little bit. We'll be voting for $300,000 of E&D to pay for those capital items.
And so I think that means that there won't be any warrants on
Correct.
at either town meeting about capital items.
Right.
They've been withdrawn.
Exactly. We actually never submitted them this year.
Even better.
Even better.
Less confusing. Less reading.
And I'd also like to note that, that's my old slide. There's the OPEB. This is the OPEB funding slide. So the trust was established in 2017, and the reason that we're starting to fund this is because we have $28 million in total liability, and by starting this fund and adding $500,000 to it, it will impact the region's financial statements and future bond ratings. And so there will be positive financial implications beyond just the fact that we are funding the bottom line. And so this is a good investment towards our future.
Right. We have to, as of when, start carrying this liability on our books.
As of June 30th.
So this is the first year.
Right. So the expectation is that we're doing what we can to bring that liability down. So I think this is a really good piece of this.
Yes, and I actually think that putting it in front of us by making us carry it
Is causing action.
is causing action.
Do you
Yes.
have any idea what percentage of school districts are actually starting to fund their OPEB?
Probably about 60%.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good.
And we are also very fortunate that there's been such immense community investment and community support. So we'd really like to thank the Mudge Foundation DSEF, Boosters, FOPA, Positive, PTO, Needham Bank, and other companies and private donations who've provided support in the tune of over $350,000. We're really very fortunate. There are all sorts of things that are funded that we might not otherwise be able to do for our students. So thank you for your generosity. And we thank community members for their support to educate the students of Dover and Sherborn. Thank you very much. Yay!
Well done.
So now, do we close? So can I have a motion to adjourn from the Dover-Sherborn Regional Schools budget hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and I will now, at 7:39, call the second half of the March 5th Regional School Committee meeting to order. And we are then going to start with, do we do all the votes?
Oh, right, so any community comments?
Oh, sorry, thank you. Questions, community comments?
Regarding budget or anything?
It could be anything, but I'm thinking it would be budget.
Okay.
Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Shall we move on then? And so, fortunately, I have these written out because there's some of them are the first one's rather lengthy and has lots of numbers. So,
You need to know if there's any discussion on that first.
And from anyone else?
well, do I make the motion then we have discussion?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, so I'll make the motion and then there'll be opportunity for discussion. I would like to hear a motion to adopt the FY20 budget in the amount of $25,792,254, which is reduced by estimated receipts and available funds in the amount of $3,715,463, for a net amount to be assessed to the member towns of $21,547,183. This assessment is comprised of $21,110,991 in operating expenses and $965,800 in debt expenses, and that the treasurer be authorized to certify this budget in the apportioned share of each town based on the statutory method.
So moved.
Yeah, 1 second though, I'm just questioning the numbers, I am sorry.
Okay.
I need to just double check this.
So moved pending Dawn's check.
Okay, one number did not get updated.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know why that just jumped out at me now. So the,
I'm glad it did.
yeah, it did.
Yes.
Because I was paying attention to Ian's presentation. Okay, so the member town assessment, everything's right except we're gonna replace the 21,547 with 22,076,791.
You caught that. Did you? When you were
Yeah.
editing?
Oh, yeah?
Your numbers for operating and debt though do add up to the number that just got missed from those two. So I apologize for that.
That's okay. So move with that
With that
change. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Excellent job.
No, except I want to say thank you very much to Dawn and to the rest of the team for your very thorough work in putting together a tight budget in what I understand for at least one of our communities is a tight budget year, and they really needed this, and so thank you. And I also want to applaud you for finding a way to for us to begin to fund our liability, because I think that will pay dividends down the road as we need to borrow or do other things for which we need a good bond rating. So thank you.
And I will give all my predecessors, this has been a topic that I think has been on the table for like 5 or 6 years. So it was easy to close it because there had been so much discussion happening previous to it. So.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the utilization of $100,000 of June 30th, 2018 certified excess and deficiency funds for the FY20 budget? Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. Also, do I hear a motion to approve a total transfer of $500,000 into the general fund from the DITA and SHITA revolving funds to be used for the DITA, SHITA, and community education revolving funds to be used for the initial contribution to the OPEB liability trust fund.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Okay. Keep going?
No,
No?
because we'll talk about capital before you make the motion.
Okay.
It's from all of the paper.
I would just keep going.
So in your packet is the updated sort of final schedule for your fiscal year 20 capital projects. And as it was noted in the presentation and in this motion, we're going to round your request up to $300,000 just to make it a nice even number. Were there any questions on any of the items before we proceed? So I will just ask you to first approve the projects as presented at the amount, and then you can make the motion to fund it.
Oh, so I go through each one individually?
No, you
or
can just approve the capital projects as presented.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the capital F20 capital projects as presented?
So moved. Second. No, Lori's got it.
It's like bingo.
Discussion? Discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Great. Thank you. So now then,
Now you got to fund it. So you've approved it. Now you can
I have to fund. Okay. Do I hear a motion to transfer $300,000 of June 30th, 2018 certified excess and deficiency funds to the region's capital fund to cover costs for approved FY20 capital projects?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Well done. Thank you. And the beauty of that is that now we actually can put into motion some of the fiscal year 20 projects. It actually gives us a little earlier start because we don't have to wait for
The town meeting.
for the town.
Fabulous.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
Yeah.
That will make
Win-win.
all of the building and grounds people happy. That it's not an emergency time.
We're not hustling around in July.
So there is a benefit to that. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. We also have to vote on the annual annual vote on the Massachusetts school choice law.
Right. So I think everyone on here has been through this before, with perhaps the exception of Judy. Basically, by law, we have to opt in or not to school choice. You have something in your packet that pretty much explains it. Essentially, it's you'd have to, once you allow the student, you have to keep the student, and you get $5,000 from the sending community, which has never really made a lot of sense for Dover-Sherborn, given that our typical annual expenditure for students is 4 times that, so or 3 to 4 times that, and more at the high school level than at the elementary level. But it's really not financially feasible. Not to mention that you would be running up against it on space if you started. We could be very popular. Let's put it that way, and we would have problems with that. So this is something that the committees have traditionally not supported.
Okay, thank you. So do I hear a motion to have the Dover-Sherborn schools not participate in school choice program for the 2019-2020 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda? The minutes were sent. Cheryl did send the minutes in a separate email. Everyone had time to look at that. And we like to go through, and we tend to acknowledge the donations.
Yes.
So I'd just like to go through and acknowledge the donations. One is for $2,000 for the DS High School girls basketball from Needham Bank. One is for $2,500 for boys basketball from Needham Bank.
Well, that's
No,
I think it was deposited
made
into
out.
Needham Bank. It's not
Oh,
from
sorry,
Needham Bank.
sorry, from Needham
It was
Bank.
made out of the
program.
right. It's not
From
really
the programs.
Thank you for clarifying that. Sorry. All right, so they've been made to the volunteer coaches. So sorry for $2,000 for the girls basketball and $2,500 for boys basketball. We've got one for $1,000. I have to go back up and see what that one was from. Children's
That
Orthopedic.
covers the position coverage at football.
At football games,
Right.
yep, thank you. And also for a boat to the Dover-Sherborn Sailing Club. They're donating the boat, the exact amount, TBD. But we need to approve that they will be donating that. So do I hear a motion to approve? Well, I should say, Sunil, thank you very much for the generosity of all of those who made those donations. A motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Awesome. There is, as always, the other communications. The Sherborn School Committee minutes are in the packet. We don't have down listed, but we usually have. Does anybody have any topics that they would like to add for the next meeting? So we'll March the April meeting. The April meeting.
Well,
That's
it'll be the-
May.
It'll be
So the May meeting.
Okay. I'm interested in drilling down on the impacts of the different options that we're talking about for school start time.
You mean if we don't discuss it enough on the 30th, or?
Well, I mean, I think we'll probably
So-
I think we might be all discussed out, and we might have specific questions that apply to the region that are not applicable to the elementary schools. And like Dana, I think that understanding, even though I don't want to go down rabbit holes on every detail, I think your idea of the top 5 questions everyone is going to ask, and having some scenarios around that will go a long way towards us ultimately being comfortable with whatever the final recommendation is.
Okay, thank you. I think that makes sense. If anybody else thinks of anything, if they could please.
I was just saying, if we do have our new director of student services, could we meet her? I'll use that pronoun since both finalists are. Either May or June, whenever is appropriate. Be nice to have a face.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I would love to appoint this person before then,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can nail that down. And because the school committees give the final approval,
Oh, so you want to, yeah.
April
wait,
9th
9th, even
itself
better.
seems late, but if it is what it is,
Do we have to approve that?
Yeah,
Director of special ed.
we do. So
Well, so it's potential that we might try to
Convene between.
Yeah.
right stick it
the reason
before.
it would be helpful is because this person then needs to get moving on our coordinator search.
Right.
And so the sooner we could get this nailed down, if we could identify who, if we're moving someone forward, and I would know certainly after the 14th, then it would be nice if we could, in that following week, quite honestly,
Yeah.
somehow convene. Is there another meeting?
See, I was going to say, whose meeting is that?
There isn't.
I've got-
So the first, next week's the last March meeting, and then it's not till the joint meetings in April. So we thought I think when you did the search, there was a week where we said we'd probably have to convene
Yeah,
jointly.
when we did the superintendent search, we did a morning meeting one week and could get a quorum for
That's the
everybody
key.
at
We need the
Yeah,
quorum.
just need the quorum, right?
7:50, whatever time it was, 7:30 or
It was probably early, it was probably 7:15.
7:15, yeah.
Whatever you need
Yeah.
in terms of your
Yeah.
timing.
Okay,
Just
I
Yeah.
can't speak for everybody, but I will do what's needed to.
good.
Yeah,
Good.
we'll
Good to know.
provide the
And-
quorum.
And that said, if you would like the person that's ultimately selected to come to the May meeting anyhow, that's fine.
Right, actually, that was what I was thinking. I was
Yeah.
kind of assuming I'd forgotten we had to approve.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Right.
I think
Okay.
this would be nice for people who don't get to meet the candidates on the 14th, it'd probably be good to have a face to go with the
Yep. I'm
box on the org chart.
Yep.
Mhm. I think that makes sense. Great. And if anybody comes up with other thoughts, please just forward them on, and we'll put it on the agenda.
I would love, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it was in our packet, the NEASC accreditation feedback came out, and I would love it if Mr. Smith is here in his report, he could just opine on his observations about what he's thinking and where they're going in terms of the recommendations. That would be great to hear about that.
Yeah, and I think that we will definitely have both Scott and John at the May meeting, right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking that would make sense. Would you want it before?
I am in no hurry. I thought it was a great report.
Okay, yeah.
I know it's a new format for them. I'm curious to know kind of how they're gonna, attack the recommendations and kind of what's the game plan there.
Okay, I think that's a good point. Thank you.
So we officially have our joint meeting on the 9th, right, on 9th of April?
Mm-hmm.
And then another one on the 30th? Is that right?
Yep.
Both at 6:30, right? Awesome.
Right, and then May 7th.
And then May 7th.
Thank you.
All right, is everybody good?
Good.
All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Feel guilty?
Well, that was fast. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right,
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.